Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Yes, I think so. So, hello, everybody. Bonjour. Je suis José Kirps, and I'm the president of ICA since October 2022. And today it's my great pleasure to warmly welcome everyone to today's webinar on cyber archives and AI, safeguarding and enhancing digital information. As ICA, we are delighted to have you join us for this insightful session where we will delve into critical themes of information security and the innovative use of AI in archives and records management. As we navigate the complexities of the digital era, understanding the importance of cyber archives and exploring advanced AI techniques for metadata enrichment and search functionalities is essential. This virtual session is part of an ongoing series of conversations among ICA members and professionals in related fields. Our latest issue of Flush was dedicated to this topic, and we are very excited to expand the discussion with our colleagues here today, with you here today. Our esteemed moderator and speakers will share their expertise on various strategies for protecting and enhancing digital information, offering a comprehensive overview of contemporary challenges and solutions. We hope you find this session both informative and inspiring. Thank you very much for being here. And I now give the floor to our moderator, Dr. Cedric Cotta, who will introduce our guest speakers. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Cedric, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, José, for your kind introductory words. My name is Cedric Cotta, and I am researcher at the International Committee of the Red Cross. I'm very pleased to be part of this webinar and to touch on such a fascinating topic. But before I introduce the three distinguished speakers that will share their expertise in a few seconds, I have 2 points that I would like to share with you, 2 housekeeping points. So the first is that today we are testing capture feature in Zoom that provides with automatic translation. So please do not hesitate to try and to use it if it can help you, would you not be at ease in English. And the second point is that we will have limited time for Q&A at the end of this session. I will repeat it later, but we recommend you to use the Q&A box that is on the lower part of your screen rather than using the chat box. I will also thank the speakers in advance for trying to limit themselves to 20 minutes for each presentation. And now let's start with the first one on an experiment in AI-assisted metadata enrichment and diplomatic analysis for UNESCO audio archives. And I have the pleasure to introduce Thomas Chanusso and Eng Senksavana, who will be talking about this. Thomas has over 20 years of experience in IT across numerous countries, both within the UN systems and NGOs. And since 2022, he has been part of UNESCO, and right now he's chairing the UNESCO AI working group, promoting AI usage internally from this organization. While Eng is a reference archivist at UNESCO, she's part of several research studies based on AI, and she's a co-editor of a book, Record Keeping in International Organizations, Archives and Transition in Digital Networked Environments. Eng, Thomas, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to start and then Thomas will follow. So I'm going to just share my screen for our presentation. Sorry about that. Can you see my screen? Or it worked?
Yes.
Yes, you can. Okay, good. All right. Okay, so The general presentation today from UNESCO Archives is about current and future projects of UNESCO Archives and related to AI. And thank you to the ICA for inviting us to talk about what some of the experiments and projects that we're trying out with AI to assist with describing and publishing and providing access for archives. So I will be talking about the use of AI for 3 archival collections that we have: our audio recordings, handwritten 20th century correspondence, and photographs. Mostly we've been doing the work on the audio recordings, and handwritten text recognition and photographs is something we're thinking about and hoping to delve more into in the future. So I'll go into the most detail about the audio recordings project. And then Soma will talk about some more advanced access and search capabilities that we're trying out with our central document repository. So I'm just going to jump right into the audio recordings. So just to give a bit of a background, from 2017 to 2021, UNESCO Archives digitized over 17,000 archival audio recordings dating from the 1950s to the 1980s. The audio recordings are a very diverse and heterogeneous set within themselves. There's over 70 languages represented, and that's partly because UNESCO is an intergovernmental organization, and we have over 190 member states, and which has grown since its establishment in 1945. But over those decades, there are a lot of languages represented in the audio recordings that have accumulated. And as well as the languages, there's also a lot of different genres of audio recordings that are represented. So that includes radio programs, interviews, speeches, events, music, and more. So the central challenge is that the audio recordings were digitized first before the metadata was collected about them. And this is because there was little descriptive information for a lot of the recordings. Sometimes there was only a number on the recording. And so the decision was made to digitize them first, because in some cases we did not have any information about the recordings unless we could listen to them. So that's why the central challenge with this pretty substantial set of audio recordings is the description of the contents of the recordings so that they can be published and searchable. We also thought that this would be a very interesting set to try AI on or use AI to help with some of the description, because it's a low risk data set. A lot of the recordings, most of the recordings are public. They were created to be published and aired. So there was no privacy issues. UNESCO doesn't own the copyrights on all of the audio recordings, but we digitized all of the recordings that were in our collection. And so with our research partner, our academic research partner from the University of British Columbia, and my partner, Peter Sullivan, he is an AI PhD student at the University of British Columbia, and he's working out of the Deep Learning and Natural Language Processing group at UBC. We launched this study in the framework of Interpares Trust AI, which is a large international academic project that includes many sub-studies underneath it. So ours is one of those studies. And I just wanted to acknowledge the work that Peter has done. He's done most of the work in this project because he's the AI expert, and he can't be with us today because he's very busy and he's based in Vancouver. So the driving question of our study is, how can AI enable better description of the archival audio recordings? It's a very practical and concrete question, and it's a real work problem that we need to solve. The manual description of the recordings was time-consuming and laborious. So we have had interns working on the description, and up until this point, they've been able to describe over 1,000 recordings, but there are still 16,000 recordings left to describe. So in this study, we identified some specific tasks that AI could help with, and those are transcription, translation, language identification, speaker identification, and summarization. So we started out with automatic speech recognition for transcripts and for language identification. We used Whisper, and we found that for the high resource languages such as French and English, the transcriptions were quite well done and acceptable in terms of accuracy. But this was only the case when the language identification was accurate. So for other types of language identification for lower resource languages, where there's not a huge amount of models being tested on those languages or trained on those languages, such as Catalan, Galician, Welsh, and other, for example, Slovak languages, the quality of the transcripts and the language identification significantly diminished. So this also highlights the fact that for transcriptions and translations, we would, if we wanted to eventually publish those transcriptions and translations, then we would have to do some major quality control on a lot of those 70 languages that are represented. And then also in terms of publishing the, any of the descriptions that were generated or supported by AI, we would also want to include a description just for transparency and in alignment with the UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of AI in terms of the transparency and explainability of where that metadata is coming from. So, we would want to publish information about the types of models and tools that we used and exactly which metadata or which elements of the description that AI generated or produced for us. So another challenge for in terms of language identification was the number of multilingual speakers. To give an example, there are a lot of speakers represented in the recordings because they're international civil servants, or a lot of them they can speak multiple languages. And one example is a figure named Vittorino Veronesi, who's a former UNESCO Director General from 1958 to 1961. And we found recordings of him in English, German, French, Spanish, and his mother tongue, Italian. So with multilingual speech, it gets actually very interesting, but also complex because you get a variety of accents and also language contexts. Accents are particularly problematic for language ID tools. And so, they are, it's harder for a lot of large language models to be accurate about the language that those accented if it's an accented speech. So what we did is we examined the performance of several off-the-shelf language ID tools, both on the UNESCO audio recordings and on a second set of second language English speakers from Europarl. And so we found that OpenAI's latest version of Whisper, large V3, appeared to perform well at accented English speech with 94% accuracy. But Meta's MMS fell short, and it only recognized 11% of the utterances as English, which is quite extreme in terms of the difference in results. And on the multilingual speaker set, the Whisper performed at 92% accuracy. So that shows some promise. There's a few things that Peter is trying out in terms of tackling the speaker indexing issue, but I'm not going to go into that. I'm going to go into another area that we're testing out AI for, which is summarization. And we're trying a hybrid approach using diplomatic analysis, which is a traditional archival method of analyzing documents. So basically, just to give you a little bit of background, because I imagine not everyone knows what diplomatics is or diplomatic analysis. It emerged as a distinct science in the 17th century, and it aimed to understand and analyze the form of documents in order to establish their authenticity and to establish that they weren't forgeries. So it's a very defined set of characteristics that that you would document and analyze for a single manuscript or a single document. So for example, looking at external characteristics, basically any characteristics are formed that don't relate to its content. So it's medium, script, language, etc. And then you would also look at the internal characteristics of a document. So for example, how a document presents its content, like a salutation, an entitling, like a letterhead, a sign off. Those elements would be known as internal elements of form. So it seems like a bit of a leap, but what we would like to do is to identify different genres of audio recordings and apply diplomatic analysis to see whether there are any common structural elements across within a single genre, and see if we can label those different elements within a single genre, and if that could help to more quickly train an AI model to recognize the different parts of a particular genre. And so the first thing that we did was to identify the different genres that we could use for diplomatic analysis. So for example, we identified interviews as a genre, speeches, press conferences, and different types of radio programs, particularly educational or documentary radio programs. And what we're doing is that we're looking also at the transcripts as well as listening to some of the recordings within the same genre, and seeing if we can identify the different parts that could be labeled. So for example, the radio programs often begin with a musical jingle of about between 10 to 30 seconds. And that often signals the beginning of a scripted and structured educational or documentary radio program on a single topic or on multiple topics. In terms of interviews, speeches, and press conferences, they often begin with an introduction to an individual by a narrator or host who will say the name of the main speaker. And they'll also say their own name as well. They'll introduce themselves and then they'll introduce their own speakers. And in speeches and press conferences, the main speaker often introduces the general topic at hand within the first minutes of their speech. So those are just some examples. We're still doing the diplomatic analysis, and it's just a total experiment. We don't know how helpful it will be. It's also because within each genre, we don't necessarily have enough of an example of, for example, interviews to really quickly train an AI model. So we're thinking that labeling those parts for the model will maybe help to speed up the process and address the issue of not necessarily having enough of the same types of audio recording, or of an AI model not being able to summarize something because it just doesn't know how, or because it doesn't necessarily have a very clear structured narrative in its arc within itself. So that's what we're doing with audio recordings, and it's still in course. And then I'm just going to switch quickly, because I think I'm running out of time, to what we're hoping to do with paper archives. So we are looking into AI for metadata enrichment for handwritten text. And these are just some examples of handwritten documents that are from the archives of UNESCO's predecessor organization, the International Institute of Intellectual Cooperation. And that is an institute of the League of Nations. We have their entire archives, and we digitized this archive, except for the publications, as part of that project, the same project where we digitized the audio recordings. And we were able to OCR the series of documents, so a very substantial series of documents from this archive, but we could not OCR the handwritten correspondence. So the handwritten correspondence, there's about 560,000 files. Each file represents a single page chapter, and that's 7 terabytes of files. And it's a quite mixed set as well. So it's not just handwritten documents. There's also handwritten and typed documents. There's sometimes fully typed documents. There's also postcards and handwritten poems. So what you're seeing is a handwritten poem by Albert Einstein. There's documents with mixed text and image. And so this is something that we're, oh yeah, okay. So this is something that we are also looking into. And I'm going to turn it over now to Tuma. I'm just going to quickly, because I'm running out of and so, yeah, this is the next slide is just about our a small test that we did with photographs. We're hoping to continue in terms of generation of metadata. Okay, over to you, Toma.
Thank you again. Thank you, Eng. So very quickly, I think I'm going to discuss a little bit how we are using, how we are trying to use generative AI in a different way from what Eng was describing before. The genesis really of what we wanted to do was the UNESDoc platform, which is part of the our activities that we do here. UNESDoc is a massive repository of all the publications, all the documents that UNESCO produces on a yearly basis, and it's quite massive. It has 180,000 PDF documents with more than I think 400,000 references. So it's quite massive, but it's PDF, right? It's not necessarily very easy to search, to navigate. You have to download probably sometimes a 300 pages document just for a paragraph that people might be interested in. So it's the old way of accessing to information. It can be it's not an ideal user experience overall. And at the beginning of last year, when AI started to become the thing, we decided to start experimenting with small collections of UNESCO documents, and try to putting them into an AI and see what it would look like. So we had a few pilots. We worked with the Global Education Monitoring Report, which is one of the key publications that UNESCO publishes every year, that summarizes all the research and all the metrics that member states report on the theme of education. And we worked also on a World Water Development Report and a couple of other key documents. And we tested with a few of our internal users and with a few external partners whether there was an interesting way to access information and to interact with content. The feedback was very positive. Basically, it's the chatbot that, at this point, mostly everybody is familiar with on ChatGPT, but specially configured to provide sources and to basically stick to the document. So it's a retrieval augmented generative system, a RAG, as people call it in the AI field, but a little bit customized to follow strict rules of sourcing everything it says and keeping the content very grounded. It was a very positive, interesting pilot. Obviously, on a small selection of content, we have a massive amount of data that could be fed into this, not only from the perspective of archive, but also in our daily programmatic activities, because UNESCO does collect a lot of data in culture, science, and education. So it is something that we hope to expand at some time. We also found issues. We discovered challenges. We discovered an important challenge is that our data is not great. We are reverse engineering PDF documents. Originally, it was data. The data became a PDF publication with a nice layout. And then we asked the AI to turn it back into data. This is a challenge, but when we work with old data, with archives, And with the way we are operating at the moment, it's something we have to do. There's also several things we discovered is that it's not so easy to ingest into an AI a large amount of documents. There are chunking strategies to cut it into smaller pieces so that the AI can make sense of it and can answer responses that are at the same time exhaustive and accurate. We discovered a lot of problems with temporality. That's also due to the fact that people don't really understand how to interact with AI as yet. It's not magic. It needs people to be trained. We realized there were issues with temporality. If we ask a question about, information that, an example that came very frequently, education of the enrollment of Afghan schoolgirls, for example. Well, we would get all the reports that will say that the enrollment of schoolgirls has increased a lot during the last 20 years. But that's old documents. More recent documents will paint a much bleaker picture. The AI cannot really make sense of contents that contradicts itself if you are asking in a publication that is 5 or 10 years old and one that is more current. So challenges, but we think it's an incredible opportunity for accessing information that otherwise would be very difficult. It's an incredible opportunity to present new ways to interact with content and with documents and with data in general. So it's something that I hope we will be able to build on, and that will complement all of the work that Eng discussed with regards to enriching and digitizing even more of our archives. I'm a little bit over, so I will hand over, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, both of you, for your presentations that were super interesting, and I'm sure that it will trigger numerous questions at the end. But for now, I'm happy to give the floor for the second presentation, Cyber Archive Strategies, Safeguarding Digital Information. And our speaker will be Hamad Al-Mutairi. He's currently Director of the Archives Department and the National Library and Archives in the United Arab Emirates. He has collaborated a lot with Sorbonne University for teaching programs. And a very interesting point for this session today is that he's currently working on his doctoral dissertation on AI applications in archiving and records management. So we are looking forward to listening to you, Hamad. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Cedric. Thank you so much for the introduction. And happy International Week of Archives for everyone. Today I'll be talking to you about safeguarding the digital information. So if you allow me very quickly to share with you the presentation, and we will take it from there. Meanwhile, I would like also to thank ICA for providing this chance and the opportunity for us to discuss and share our knowledge around the digital archives and cyber archives and how to take care of those records. So today I will talk to you about the digital era and the cyber archives and the threats that might be threaten our, the way that we are dealing with records, archives, data, and information and knowledge. And why do we need information management system in place? And we will take you through some recommendations that can help to eliminate or avoid any issue when it comes to data management, records management in the digital environment. So we've seen that so many government organizations, so many governments around the world, they are motivating entities, organizations, companies to digitalize and automate their processes. So digital transformation took a huge amount of efforts, budget, and so many important aspects around transforming the way that we are dealing with the business from the traditional way to digital way and digital approach. As we can see in one of the reports from the World Economic Forum, 40% of task hours will be performed by machine and algorithm. And of course, because of the shift in the working approaches and the methodology that we are now applying and adopting, working from home, actually increase the amount of data, especially the digital data that we are creating, that we are dealing with. So we know that on individual level, we are creating huge amount of data in our social media accounts and our even professional work and dealing with emails, dealing with our business. So we are generating a huge amount of data, and we are living within this digital environment or cyber environment, cyberspace. So what do we mean by cyber archives, and why it's important today to focus on and to start thinking about how to plan this and how to mitigate the risk associated with the cyber archives. So from the name, cyber archives is a collection of digital records, document data, and information stored electronically or online. And because we are, as the National Library and Archives of United Emirates and any other memory institutes, we are information-based organization, and we are hosting the national data, the national records. So we need to take care of those records. And today I'm focusing a bit about the technology, but not from a technical point of view, but from the point of protecting the data and preserving the data for the future. So can cyber archives exist in cyberspace the same way archives exist in the physical world? Of course, the answer is no. We need to make sure that we are ready to deal with the cyber archives. We need to educate the stakeholders that we are dealing with, the internal stakeholders, the employees, the external, our clients. We need to make sure that we are all understanding the responsibility of taking care of the cyber archives. So there are so many challenges associated with cyber space, cyber archives. There are so many threats, but we need to keep in mind that there are three main elements that we need to take care of to make sure that we are protecting the data in the right way. Confidentiality is number one, integrity is number two, and availability. So the confidentiality, we mean to provide the right controls in place to make sure that the confidential data, the privacy data is protected according to the best practices. The integrity, this is very straightforward and directly to what we do, because we need to make sure that we provide trusted information to our client, to our researchers, to our stakeholders in general. So making sure the integrity is high. And of course, the last point is the availability, because there are so many issues, so many attacks around just disturbing or creating issues to eliminate the services or to stop the government organizations or the companies internationally to provide their services to their clients. There are so many cyber attacks, and there are so many ways, so many approaches. And we've seen that phishing and social engineering and deepfake now are becoming very trendy nowadays. We receive so many calls, we receive so many emails, annoying emails, and sometimes we might not be able to differentiate between authentic, original request or email or a call from those malicious sources. So we need to make sure that We don't provide our information, especially the personal information, to any stranger. We need to make sure that whenever we are accessing any website, we need to make sure that this is an authentic website. We need to make sure that we are dealing with someone that we are sure that we know this person. We have some sort of agreement to understand the relationship and to understand those people or those sources that we are dealing with. And because we are receiving so many emails from different sources, there are so many also malware and some malicious codes might be within those emails or calls, or even sometimes even through WhatsApp messages. So we need to be aware that we don't click on links if we are not sure about the senders. One other way or format of the attack is distributed denial of service. And this type of attack is targeting services just to stop organization or companies from providing their services. And one of the main issues is actually the internal threats. We might be the weakest link in the overall life cycle of the information security management system. We might provide some information, some sensitive information without any intention to do that, but by talking to somebody, again, by referring to the first point, by social engineering, people might have different ways to extract information that will help them to attack the organization in different ways. And we need also to make sure that we don't engage any device or system or application without a proper procedure for that, because sometimes you might download the system or download application, but there are so many backdoors, there are so many malicious codes within that software if it is not approved by the right authority within the organization. So we need to have some sort of procedures to make sure that whenever we are having a system or a device or any application, that it should be tested and it should be according to the right standards in adopting any solution within the organization. Of course, there will be so many consequences for the cyber attacks: data breaches, data loss, corruption, financial issues, financial losses, reputational damage, operational disruption, and there are so many actually indirect even consequences. So we need to make sure that we try to put controls in place just to avoid any issue with that. Just a quick example, a few years ago, one of the company got hacked, and they pay a huge amount of money just to do the digital forensics, just to understand if the company got any financial loss or not. So even the forensics or even the investigation is costing a huge amount of money just to understand if they got really damaged or it was just a way of just creating some threats for the organization. This is one of the examples of the attacks and in numbers and statistics. This was a report conducted in the UAE showing the total attacks of DDoS attack in the UAE. It was around 58,000 attacks. And if you would like to know about the global scale, it was around 7.9 million attacks globally on different organizations. And they were targeting, if you see the last part of the statistics, you will see that they are targeting mostly telecommunication and data hosting. And here I need to pause because, again, from archiving point of view, from the point of any national library or national archives, we need to make sure that we are protecting the data, we're preserving the data, and we need to make sure that we are ready to be responsible to take care of those records. And I'll just quickly pause and show you a live attack on real time very quickly. So this is happening right now. If you will see the amount of data and the amount of attacks, and you will be able, I guess, to see how, because even in the previous presentation, we heard about, how to use AI and how to adopt AI. So if you can see, I believe that most of those attacks are coming from AI or automated machines without even human intervention. So the code now is generated to attack in different ways, and sometimes to steal data, or sometimes just to disturb the organization to provide their services. So it's really scary to see this type of statistics and data. And you can see on the left-hand side the type of attack, whether it's web attacks or DDoS attack or scammers, or there are so many ways. And you will be able also to see on the right-hand side some other aspects or some other facts that will also give you some indications that you need to take care while developing your either management system or even IT system. So how to translate also the policies, procedures into our system. And in information security, we need to make sure that we have different layers to protect the data, starting from the employees and the applications, the application level, the network level, the database level, and we need to make sure that we are taking the best control to make sure that we are preserving our data. Going back to the presentation. So in the UAE, in the United Arab Emirates, the government of UAE established Cybersecurity Council to promote information security and cybersecurity, and to also publish and issue laws and bylaws, standards, and best practices to secure the organization assets, especially the informational assets. And also it described so many procedures that we need to take in mind. For example, the access control, how to encrypt the data, what sort of data that need to be encrypted, how to use detective and preventive systems, how to regulate the security audit and the vulnerability assessment. And we are also required by the law to conduct different type of audits, like penetration testing, for example, to make sure that the systems are ready to stop the attackers or the hackers from getting into our internal systems. We need to make sure that we provide the right training, the right awareness for different segments, not just for the IT staff, but also for the general staff. We need also to provide specific awareness for and educational programs, maybe for the archivist, for the people who are dealing with the data, to make sure that we are following the right standards. We need also to keep in mind that we need to take regular backup according to the backup strategy. We need to have a disaster recovery plan. We need to test it. We need to make sure that we are ready to respond to those issues. And again, this is part of the incident response plan, because there are so many scenarios that we've seen where organization will got their plan, but it's not tested in reality. So when it comes to reality, they are not 100% sure how to implement and execute those plans. Again, regarding the artificial intelligence, UAE invested a lot in the creating the state-of-the-art infrastructure to deploy artificial intelligence in different industry and different sectors. But at the same time, because we are talking about the cyber archives and the cyber security, I thought also to think about AI today and to talk to you today about AI, but from security point of view. Yes, we need to depend on AI in so many processes, but we need to make sure that we again have the right control within the AI algorithm, the AI codes, to avoid any again malicious activities within the AI tools, utilities, and applications. So we need to have strategies that should be aligned with AI in general strategy, taking care of how to preserve and how to protect the cyber archives in deploying any AI or any even emerging technology tools or utility within our organizations. Next week, even UAE government is working on or will be conducting AI retreat, and they will gather all experts from different sectors to discuss the future of AI. And we will be also participating in that just to make sure that the cyber archives is something and one of the major elements that we need to consider in developing any AI strategy. Just to conclude very quickly, there are so many recommendations, and we can talk in details in maybe future events about each aspect of cyber archives and cybersecurity in specific. But I believe we can start by implementing the best practices and standards around protecting the data. And I can start by just saying that the ISO 27001, which is related to information security management system, is something really important to have, that the organization should establish and should start deploy and implement, because it will give you the foundation of information security and the main requirement that any organization must have. So develop cyber archive strategies, policies, procedures, implement security measures and control, conduct regular audit and assessment, whether it's internal assessment or even external assessment, training and awareness, develop test and incident response plan. And here also I want to highlight that government organization or companies or any institution must have their business continuity management system in place to make sure that they are ready to respond to the attacks or to any issues, to any threat, and they will be able to recover within certain time, and they need to continue their activities, their processes, to provide the mandate of their organization in the right way. So we need to have business continuity in place. And I can talk for days about business continuity and the importance of business continuity and how to adopt the business continuity concept within the organizations. And we need to we need to be informed always about the emerging trends, technologies, to make sure that we are aware of what we are doing, what we are implementing in our organization. And we need to study the risk that might be generated from those technologies. So sometimes we need to look at the negative side of the technology just to understand, analyze, and recommend the best ways to implement the either artificial intelligence, blockchain, or any emerging technologies. I hope I didn't, scare you with those information, but there are very important aspects that we need to consider, especially as we are responsible to preserve the data for the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your presentation and all the elements that you shared with us. I invite our three speakers to switch the camera on so we can start the Q&A session. Please do not hesitate to ask questions in the chat box. And I will start with the first one that is dedicated to Eng. Given that the period that UNESCO came into existence, circa 1945, in what context did records of the 20s became part of your collections?
Okay, thanks for the question. It's a good one. So it's true, UNESCO was established in 1945, but actually it inherited a lot of its mission from what we consider to be our ancestor, the International Institute of Intellectual Cooperation, which was a League of Nations institute based in Paris. And along with inheriting a lot of its mission, UNESCO also inherited its archives. So that's why we have their archives as well.
Great, thank you so much. I have a second question, but for Hamad this time. The question is, in the final analysis, cyber attacks are motivated ultimately for monetary gain. From your research, have there been any cyber attacks emanating from within archival institutions?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I believe, according to the research that we conducted, we couldn't find any attacks on any archival institution. And as the question said, most of the attacks are, financial-oriented attacks. Most of the attacks. But again, we need to make sure that we have the control in place, just to make sure that, it might also affect, because as we all know that the data is also considered as a huge value. So it can turn into also financial, aspect. So this is the way that we see it now. But again, we need to preserve, we need to protect it.
Thank you very much for your answer. There is another question that might be addressed both to Thomas and Hamad, so I will read it and then I let both of you if you want to answer. So what do you think archivists can do more to bridge the gap to AI? Thank you. I don't know if one of you or Ang, you want to.
I'll start if I may, Hamad, quickly. I think there are two aspects we can see here. One of them is really enriching and facilitating archival tasks, I would say. Eng gave a few examples of, enriching metadata and retrieving metadata from existing archives, which were not possible before the stepping up of AI capabilities. This applies to our audio recordings, for example, doing transcription, doing indexing of thousands of hours of audio recordings before AI could do speech to text. That was not possible. And speech to text has existed for a long time, but it didn't have the capabilities it has now with AI. The same goes with the other activities that Eng briefly presented. So photo, you can't get everything through an AI image recognition, but you can enrich the description. For example, with the few tests that we've done, we took pictures from the Abu Simbel campaign in Egypt in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 60s. And well, the AI could not tell us when the photo was taken from, but it could say that, oh, here I see temple, here I see a desert. This might be from archaeological excavations. So it can't say everything, but it can substantially accelerate the task of extracting metadata. And I think the other theme where AI can be useful is really about access to information. And that's the very quick pilot I talked about. Generative AI in particular can really enrich the way and change the way we interact with content. And instead of getting just links to a few keywords that you would have found, it's able to understand semantic similarities, poorly phrased questions, and it will still give answers that, with all the issues that are still inherent to the current capabilities of AI. You'll need to check the sources, that they are accurate. You'll need to check that there are no hallucinations. But it's an incredible research and answer, and a really innovative way to access information.
Thank you. Hamad, would you like, or
Yeah.
would you like to intervene on this question?
Yeah, very quickly. I just seen in the Q&A that an example of attack on one of the libraries. But again, it's a different thing. But in archives, I don't know. Maybe there are things, but in our research, we couldn't find anything, recent. Um, Regarding the question about how to bridge the gap between, archivist and archiving and AI in general, I believe there are two major points. To me, is first aligning our strategies in archiving with AI specialists, because I believe the gap between IT people and archiving people is a bit there is a gap between us. We need to talk more. We need to discuss more. We need to explain our issues and to translate those issues into technical and functional, requirements, so that IT specialists can help us to move forward with those issues and deploy the AI in the best and optimum way that can help us to do that. And the second element is training. So we need to train um, archivists on how to use AI, and we need to also train IT specialists regarding the foundation and records management and archives management in general.
Thank you very much for your answer. Maybe one request we had on the chat box, a link to the attacks on British libraries. Maybe we'd like also to share in the chat for everyone the website that you showed us during your presentation on the live tracker of cyber attacks. That could be quite interesting. There would be many more questions to ask. For instance, to Thomas, how do you manage to address the issue of temporality in your chatbot? How can they see the temporal difference in documents? And I guess it would require a very long answer. So I don't know if in 2 sentences you can tell us how you address this challenge or not.
We've identified it as a challenge, as an issue. We haven't found a solution yet. But as Hamad was saying, I think there's research to do on this, and there is training. There are things that AI just cannot do. It's not magic. It's science. You need to understand how it works, and you need to adapt your behavior to make sure it does what it can do. So a lot of people think it's magic. We've been, the media are doing a lot to make this belief, but it is not.
Thank you. I see that time is running, so we are already going to the end of this conversation. Maybe if you want, but there is no obligation, would you like to share 1 or 2 conclusive sentences, both Henk, Thomas, or Hamad? If you want, you are not obliged to do. If there is something that you really want to share with us before we close this session.
I will just share to respond to that last question about what can archivists do. The other thing I think is partnerships with academic partners and AI companies. I think it's really important to work, as Hamad was saying, also with AI specialists and try to learn from them as well, and also even influence how they train their models in ways that are responsible and ethical.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you to everyone attended this session, and I would like again to thank the ICA. Cedric, thank you. The speakers also, it was very informative. And I have one recommendation: the more we talk, as we did today, is the more that we will improve the way that we are dealing with records and the way that we are dealing, especially with cyber archives and the digital information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So yes, just to conclude, big thanks to the 3 of you for all your expertise and for being for agreeing to share it with you, and a huge thanks also for all people who are behind the scene who organized it, from the ICA part, and especially Maria Paula from ICA, who made this webinar possible. So I hope you all enjoyed the discussion, And at least in Europe, it is mid-afternoon on Friday, so I guess that you will all enjoy the well-deserved weekend. And I really thank you for attending this webinar. Have a nice morning, afternoon, or evening. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
And thank you, Cedric, as well.